In the early morning hours of August 30th, 2013, California Highway Patrol officers discovered the damaged remains of a car near Castaic Lake, in the mountains northwest of Los Angeles. The vehicle was badly wrecked and soon identified as belonging to 19-year-old Bryce Laspisa. What made the discovery even more alarming was one critical detail: Bryce was nowhere to be found. At the same time, nearly 100 miles south in Laguna Niguel, Bryce's parents, Michael and Karen Laspisa, were waiting for their son to return home from college. Karen had last spoken to Bryce at around 2 a.m. that morning. He told her he had pulled over on Interstate 5, saying he was too tired to continue driving and planned to sleep before finishing the trip home at sunrise. But morning came, and Bryce never arrived. Instead of their son, a knock came at the door. Standing there was an officer from the California Highway Patrol. He informed Michael and Karen that Bryce's car had been found. The rear window was shattered, and Bryce's phone, laptop, and wallet were still inside. Yet Bryce himself had vanished. As the shock set in, the strange events of the previous 24 hours began to fall into place. At around 11 a.m. the day before, Michael and Karen learned that Bryce had used their insurance to call for roadside assistance while driving home from Sierra College, north of Sacramento. His car had run out of fuel, and a local service station owner delivered 3 gallons of gasoline to Bryce at around 9 a.m. But hours later, Bryce still hadn't left. Concerned, his parents contacted the service station owner again and asked him to check on Bryce. When the man returned around 3 p.m., Bryce was still sitting in the exact same spot. The owner urged him to get moving and reminded him that his parents were expecting him home in about 3 hours. More time passed, and Bryce still didn't arrive. Police eventually located him just a few miles down the road by tracking his phone. Officers spoke with Bryce and told him his parents were worried. They noted that he appeared lucid, calm, and friendly, showing no signs of intoxication. No drugs or alcohol were found in the vehicle. After some encouragement, Bryce got back on Interstate 5 and resumed his drive home. Then came the 2 a.m. phone call, the last time Karen ever heard her son's voice. Security camera footage later showed Bryce pulling off the highway onto an access road just 15 minutes after that call. From that moment on, his movements are unknown. Divers searched Castaic Lake but found no trace of him. Police dogs tracked his scent across a nearby bridge toward a truck stop. Then, the trail abruptly went cold. To this day, the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa remains a mystery. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the past. I'm staff writer Austin Harvey, joined by staff writer Kellen Frog, and today we're diving into the baffling disappearance of Bryce Laspisa. This marks our second missing persons case in a row, and while it shares similarities with the Brandon Swanson case, this one stands apart, largely because of the behavioral clues surrounding Bryce in the months leading up to his disappearance. Bryce Laspisa was the only child of Karen and Michael Laspisa. He was born on April 30th, 1994, in Springfield, Illinois. Friends and family described him as artistic, outgoing, and someone who made friends easily. In 2012, he graduated from Naperville's Central High School, just outside Chicago. Shortly afterward, his parents retired early and relocated to Laguna Niguel, California, a major life change for the family. Bryce enrolled at Sierra College in Roseville, a few hours from home. His first year went smoothly. Good grades, a solid social life, a girlfriend named Kim Sly, and a close friendship with his roommate, Sean Dixon. But during his second year, things began to change. Both Kim and Sean noticed Bryce becoming more withdrawn, erratic, and depressed. Kim later revealed that Bryce had begun taking Vyvanse, an amphetamine-based medication prescribed for ADHD, despite not having the condition. He wasn't using it to study, but to stay up all night playing video games. The side effects of Vyvanse misuse can be severe, including depression, mania, and psychosis, and Bryce's behavior seemed to reflect that risk. It worsened when Sean noticed that Bryce had started drinking heavily, sometimes consuming as much as 2/5 of liquor in a single weekend. Combining alcohol with stimulants can mask intoxication, leading to dangerous overconsumption. Soon after, Bryce abruptly broke up with Kim, sending her a deeply self-deprecating message saying she'd be better off without him. Around the same time, he sent Sean an unusually emotional text. "I love you, bro. Seriously. You're the best person I've ever met. You saved my soul." Then came another troubling sign. Bryce began giving away his personal belongings, including diamond earrings his mother had given him and even his Xbox. To those close to him, it felt less like generosity and more like a goodbye. This kind of behavior is often indicative, or at least suggestive, of someone who's deeply struggling. And if Bryce truly was dealing with severe depression, everything seemed to be moving in that direction. His friends noticed it too. Because of this, Sean eventually called Bryce's mother Karen and told her plainly that her son was acting strangely and something didn't feel right. This phone call happened on August 28th, just days, maybe only a week into Bryce's sophomore year at college. It was almost immediate. As soon as he returned to college, things clearly began to unravel. That same night, Bryce also called his mother himself. At the time, he was at Kim's apartment. Kim had taken his car keys because she was worried about his state of mind. Karen spoke to Kim and ultimately convinced her to return the keys so Bryce could go back to his own apartment and get some rest. During that call, Karen asked the question any concerned parent would ask. "Did you want me to fly out? Do you need me to come see you?" Bryce told her no. He said they would talk the next day. Then he added something chilling in hindsight. He told her, "I have a lot to talk to you about." This is where everything starts to escalate. At 1 a.m. on August 29th, just a few hours after that conversation, Karen called her mother again. Karen assumed he was safely back in his apartment. In reality, she had no idea where her son was. Phone records later revealed that Bryce was already an hour south of Rockland, driving toward her parents' home in Laguna Niguel. At the time, Karen had no clue her son had left campus and was heading south. Then, about 10 hours later, Michael and Karen received a notification that Bryce had used their insurance roadside assistance. Immediately, alarm bells went off. Why would he need roadside help? Where was he? They were able to contact the mechanic who responded to the call, a man named Christian, the owner of Castro Tire and Gas in a nearby town. Christian told them Bryce had run out of fuel near Button Willow and that he had delivered 3 gallons of gasoline to him. The problem was the timing. Bryce should have been home hours earlier. He was only about 3 hours away, yet nearly 10 hours had passed. Michael and Karen shared their concern with Christian, who agreed to go back and check on Bryce. When Christian returned to the spot where he'd first helped him, Bryce was still there, or only a few miles away. He hadn't meaningfully moved in hours. Christian stayed on the phone with Bryce's parents, and together they urged Bryce to keep driving and go home. He agreed. But hours passed again. Still no Bryce. At this point, Michael and Karen contacted the police and requested a welfare check. Officers tracked Bryce's phone and found him just a few miles from where Christian had last seen him. Police later said Bryce appeared lucid, calm, and cooperative. He showed no signs of intoxication, and no drugs or alcohol were found in the car. Once again, officers had to convince Bryce to continue driving home. By now, nearly 24 hours had passed since Bryce left Kim's apartment. At around 2 a.m. on August 30th, Bryce called his mother one last time. He told her he was too tired to keep driving and planned to pull over, sleep for a few hours, and finish the drive in the morning. But later, security camera footage revealed something unsettling. Instead of pulling over to rest, Bryce turned onto an access road off the highway. A few hours later, his 2003 Toyota Highlander was found overturned near Castaic Lake. Inside the vehicle were Bryce's personal belongings, his phone, wallet, and laptop. Bryce himself was gone. At around 8 a.m., there was a knock at the Laspisa family's door. For a moment, Michael and Karen thought their son had finally made it home. Instead, they were greeted by a police officer. Bryce's car had been found. Bryce had not. Authorities conducted an extensive search of Castaic Lake. Divers found nothing. Police dogs tracked Bryce's scent across a bridge toward a nearby truck stop where the trail abruptly ended. The assumption was that Bryce may have walked there after the crash and then vanished. In 2013, charred remains were discovered near Castaic Lake, briefly raising hope for answers. They were not Bryce's. 4 years later, a skull was found near Templin Highway. Once again, it was determined to be unrelated. Several theories remain. Some believe Bryce chose to disappear intentionally, overwhelmed by whatever he was battling internally. Others suggest he was injured in the crash and later succumbed to his injuries. But without a body, nothing can be confirmed. And so, more than a decade later, the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa remains unsolved. One possibility is that Bryce may have stumbled into the water and been pulled under, but Castaic Lake isn't small. It's about 330 feet deep and roughly 3.5 square miles. It's not on the scale of something like the Great Lakes. Typically, bodies in reservoirs like that aren't dragged far out. They're often pushed back toward the shoreline. Still, it's impossible to rule anything out entirely. Maybe Bryce was injured, confused, and believed he could swim. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but in a crisis, logic doesn't always apply. Another theory suggests Bryce may have encountered a bad actor that night, someone who harmed him. However, there's no concrete evidence to support that idea. The most widely accepted theory remains that Bryce was experiencing a severe mental health crisis. His behavior strongly suggests it, possibly exacerbated by drug and alcohol misuse, or even a psychotic break. Some believe withdrawal from Vyvanse could have triggered a sudden and overwhelming depressive spiral. The only notable update in the case came much later. In August of 2023, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released an age-progressed image showing what Bryce might look like at 29 years old. For many, the psychotic break theory makes the most sense. Bryce had undergone abrupt behavioral changes, not just the emotional messages to his girlfriend and roommate, or the act of giving away his belongings, which can appear suicidal, but also his repeated pattern of stopping, sitting for hours, and not knowing where he was going. That behavior doesn't neatly align with a typical suicide scenario. Someone who is suicidal might wrestle internally, wanting to go home, not wanting to burden their parents, going back and forth mentally. Bryce's actions feel different, more disoriented, more unstable. At one point, suspicion briefly fell on Christian, the mechanic who helped Bryce with fuel, but that theory doesn't hold up. Police independently encountered Bryce later and confirmed his condition. By all accounts, Christian appears to have simply been a helpful stranger, and there's no evidence suggesting otherwise. What makes the case eerily familiar is how it mirrors other disappearances: a car crash, a young man wandering into the night, and then vanishing completely. It's possible Bryce may have stumbled into the water and been pulled under, but Castaic Lake doesn't have a traditional shoreline in many areas, which complicates things further. His scent trail, tracked by police dogs, led to a nearby truck stop and then abruptly ended. That detail is chilling. If Bryce reached the truck stop, who did he encounter there? Did someone help him or harm him? Or was the truck stop simply a dead end with no usable surveillance footage? Even the definition of truck stop is unclear. Was it a full rest area with facilities or just a roadside pull-off? There's also the theory that Bryce intentionally disappeared to start a new life. It's an intriguing idea, especially given other real-world cases where people have successfully faked their deaths. But those cases typically involve clear planning, new identities, financial moves, erased digital footprints. There's no evidence Bryce did anything like that. Unlike those cases, Bryce showed no signs of preparation. He didn't obtain new identification. He didn't plan an escape. In fact, his actions, calling for help, stopping repeatedly, sitting for hours, suggest the opposite of a calculated disappearance. If Bryce wanted to vanish, he could have done so without drawing attention. Instead, everyone around him, his girlfriend, his roommate, his parents, even strangers, were deeply concerned about his mental state. That concern speaks volumes. There's no easy way to transition out of a story like this, but next time we'll be shifting gears completely. Our next episode is going to be very different, strange, even a little goofy. Netflix is releasing a documentary we'll be covering about an Elvis impersonator from Mississippi, a hardcore conspiracy theorist who believed he uncovered a massive body parts trafficking ring. He was arrested for allegedly sending deadly ricin to President Obama, only for investigators later to determine it was actually a rival Elvis impersonator. Yes, really. After 2 heavy episodes, the next one is going to be wild, and it'll also be our final episode of the year since we're heading into a well-earned holiday break. In the meantime, you can find more of our work at All That's Interesting, where we publish new stories every day. You can sign up for our newsletter, become a member for bonus episodes like History Happy Hour, and follow us on social media, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for full episodes and shorts. If you enjoy the show, leaving a rating really helps us out. And if you want to reach us, you can leave a voicemail or send us an email. We read and listen to every message. Episode suggestions are always welcome. For now, thank you for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks for a truly bizarre Elvis-filled story to close out the year. Take care of yourselves.